4GB graphics cards are back. In the year 2026, we are getting a brand new 4GB GPU. What a wonderful world we live in. I'm sure many of you have seen the news about AMD's Radeon RX 9050 that they've just announced. And as part of this new GPU release, some big brain genius at AMD decided to create a 4GB configuration. Because, as we all know, 8GB of VRAM is far too much for today's games. We certainly have never talked about 8GB being a major limitation on this channel. No, we've never done that. So the RX 9050 4GB just makes perfect sense. It's cheaper to make by presumably tens of dollars. It plays all the hottest titles like Minesweeper and Solitaire, and it has the latest features like support for Radeon Boost and Smart Access Video. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to revisit the spiritual predecessor to the wonderful new RX 9050 4GB configuration, the Radeon RX 6500 XT. This amazing graphics card was released in January 2022 with a baseline 4GB configuration. Now, when it was released, we were in a period of high graphics card prices, so AMD was doing everyone a big favor when they launched this card at $200 US, which was definitely the real price you paid for one at the time. Not a fake price. You definitely didn't have to actually pay $300 for this. That would be absurd. No, this was a very cheap model that would play all your favorite games for years to come, and it definitely was not a massive trap for unsuspecting buyers who had to fork out a ridiculous amount on an insufficient 4GB GPU. Now, aside from the revolutionary 4GB configuration, the 6500 XT came with a range of wonderful features. Now, we all know that modern GPUs come with too many display outputs. Having 4 or 5 ports is way too many. Constantly see complaints about that because it allows you to plug in multiple monitors, which can of course be distracting during gameplay sessions. So what AMD did was give you just 2 display outputs. We've got 1 display port, 1 HDMI. That's what I call a distraction-free gaming setup. Absolutely incredible idea from AMD there. They also removed the video encoder in the 6500 XT, so you can't record gameplay and share it with your friends. At face value, you might be thinking that sounds like a terrible, nonsensical move, but that's where you're wrong. Not having any video encoders is designed to improve the happiness of gamers who have no friends. If you're creating all these gameplay clips and there's no one to share them with, you'd probably cry alone in the shower, but AMD have solved that problem. The card simply cannot create any gameplay clips in the first place, preventing any spirals of sadness. And the final amazing feature AMD brought to the table was a PCIe 4.0 x4 interface. They wanted to make sure that if you were being a bad boy gamer and exceeding the resources of this card, that your gaming session would be absolutely crippled as much as possible. This is to teach gamers good gaming habits, a bit of tough love and discipline. It's easy to be too generous with PCIe lanes. Just go on a VRAM diet, keep those games within 4GB and you'll be living a glorious, healthy life. To see the brilliant experience that a 4GB GPU offers in 2026, I'm going to dive into some gameplay. I'm going to explore a range of the latest titles, and everything, well, it should work just fine, I reckon. Absolutely no issues to come. I'm definitely not going to run into games barely working or not working at all. That would be ludicrous for a GPU released around 4 years ago, well after the PlayStation 5 that of course plays all of today's games. So let's go get my gaming rig and get to enjoying this wonderful GPU, the 4GB 6500 XT. Today's video is brought to you by Ugreen and their new Nexode Pro 160-watt charger with a built-in retractable USB-C cable. It delivers up to 140 watts through the USB-C 1 port or the 70cm retractable cable, which can be extended to 8 different lengths, keeping your desk tidy with the cable hidden when not in use. There's 4 charging ports in total with up to 160 watts of simultaneous power output, making it easy to charge 2 laptops simultaneously. There's even a built-in smart display showing real-time stats for every port, plus there's a Bluetooth/Wi-Fi app that lets you remotely adjust charging modes, power settings, and the smart display itself. If you need even more power, Ugreen also offer the Nexode Pro 300-watt desktop charger with 8 ports and the same smart display, making it the ultimate charging hub for your entire setup. Check out the links in the description to learn more. So my first thought when testing the 6500 XT is that if I'd purchased this GPU about 4 years ago and I was really strapped for cash and it was sort of the only option I had available to me, I probably would have wanted it to last up until now to play the latest games. That's at least maybe the thinking that some people had used. You may argue otherwise. So I thought, you know what, let's try and play Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced is the first title. It's come out this year. It's a remake of an old popular game that almost certainly actually would have run on the 6500 XT. Let's see how this title runs with this particular GPU. So to begin with, I thought I won't go too hard on this particular GPU. I'll try some maybe reasonable settings if you had a modern GPU. So 1440p resolution, native TAA rendering, and I've chosen the high preset. You can see here that Assassin's Creed is telling us that we're using 7.5 gigabytes out of a usable 4 gigabytes, so that bodes really well for our gaming experience. I'm sure we'll be getting a great frame rate once we load into the game. So let's just load in and we'll see how things are running. And you can see from that loading screen that things aren't off to the best start, but fingers crossed we get a nice gaming experience out of this once we load in. Ah, yes, very nice, and well, I don't think it's even fair to call this sort of a cinematic experience. What we're currently looking at is more of a stop motion experience. So if you're a real fan of that art form, stop motion animation, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced on the 6500 XT at 1440p gives you exactly that experience. So it's currently running at about 9 frames per second. So we're really able to see every single frame. So if you want to appreciate the nice scenery, make sure that you're not getting any blur or anything like that. You certainly won't see any of that at this sort of frame rate. So that's a really nice configuration, but I think we can improve performance a bit further and get higher, maybe into the single. Well, we're in the single digits right now. Maybe we can get into the double digits with a few settings tweaks. So I think first port of call is 1440p may be a little too performance intensive for this particular GPU. So we'll just drop that down to 1080p. And then we will also dive over here into the preset and we'll dump this down to, there's settings below low, but hopefully we won't have to utilize those. We'll go down to the low preset at 1080p and see if that changes our fortunes. Nice. So 1080p low settings, things are going really well for us. We've doubled our frame rate from a whopping 9 FPS to about 17 FPS. So things are going super well for us here. Currently playing 1080p low settings as we go back into the city area. I mean, this is not quite a cinematic frame rate. We're still being able to see all of the frames on screen for quite a period of time, but there's an easy fix for this, of course. At 1080p, we've talked about on the channel how much we absolutely love AMD's FSR 3.1 technology and how well it works at a 1080p resolution. It's not blurry or anything, it doesn't look awful. We would, of course, recommend this to everyone. So let's use the FSR performance settings at 1080p. We're still exceeding the amount of VRAM that the game claims to be using, but we'll see how we go. Ah, nice. This is the visual experience that I love from PC gaming. Now, if you were looking at this and thinking that this is extremely pixelated, extremely blurry, and an outright garbage way to play any sort of game, well, you'd be wrong. This is just a brilliant experience. I mean, you can see all the edges on all of the characters. You can see this pixelation. And to me, all of this grain, blur, smearing, and awful visual experience, it just enhances the PC experience on a 6500 XT. And the bonus benefit that we're getting is that despite this looking like a baboon's ass, we're not even really achieving much over 30 FPS. When we're sort of walking and looking at this wall, we're getting slightly over 30 FPS. But then with any sort of NPCs or characters on screen, we're dropping right down to that cinematic frame rate of just a little bit below 30 FPS, currently 23 FPS, which is of course a great way to play the game. Now there are presets lower than low, so maybe we will have luck getting this into the playable sort of frame rate range using 1080p FSR performance if we drop the overall preset down to the ultra low, which is the lowest preset outside of the handheld stuff, which I think just changes a few different settings. So we'll load back into the game and we'll see where the ultra low 1080p FSR performance mode gives us the experience that the 6500 XT can truly deliver. So we're back into Assassin's Creed. Here we're loading the ultra low preset, and boy am I impressed with the smoothness here. We have improved from about 25 FPS in this range to about 45 FPS now. Now, does the game still look absolutely garbage? Yes. Is this a great way to play any sort of game? No. Are we getting an acceptable frame rate for modern PC games? Not really, but it does work on the 6500 XT with these ultra low settings. It is smashing the VRAM. We're currently getting 3.9 gigabytes of VRAM usage as measured in MSI Afterburner. I think the game is still saying that we're using over the recommended limit, so still 5.4 gigabytes out of the 4 gigabytes that it recommends. So this really isn't a game that's supposed to work on a 4 gigabyte GPU, and to be fair, it doesn't really work. But you can load it, it does work, so let's try out a couple of other titles and see what we can do. So the next game I wanted to try out is 007 First Light, the game I am currently playing on my gaming PC, having a lot of great fun playing it. And so I loaded up the title and I sort of was looking at some of the settings without doing too much commentary, just sort of giving a feel of things and just seeing what the game would configure itself in out of the box. And so I thought, okay, you know, it was set to 1440p. I lowered the resolution down to 1080p. I turned off VSync. I was just going through some of the settings and seeing, okay, so everything's on low sort of settings, right? Reflection quality is on low, shadow quality is on low, terrain quality low, texture quality is on low. So basically the lowest settings the game has to offer. I loaded into this particular level, which is the Mauritania level, and we're getting 20 FPS. So 20 FPS, 1080p low settings in 007 First Light. You can see as well, you might have noticed in those graphic settings earlier that we're getting a VRAM warning. So it's saying that we're using 5.7 gigabytes. And certainly if you look at the Afterburner overlay, we're kind of smashing the VRAM, 3.8 gigabytes. Pretty much an indication that we're spilling over into the system memory. We are using 22 gigabytes of system memory. So quite a lot of these resources are being spilled over there. And the frame rate is pretty bad. We're only looking at 20 FPS. Now, we're not using any sort of upscaling at the moment. Not that the game looks amazing using these low settings to begin with. And this is one of the more taxing areas in the game that I've played so far. But certainly the 6500 XT is giving us that sort of, you know, cinematic experience that people have come to love from PC gaming. Very, very slow, not great. Let's enable some upscaling to see if we can really improve things. I think we're probably going to need to use at least FSR performance mode upscaling. So let's turn on FSR. FSR upscaling, we'll set that to performance mode. And we're just sneaking over 30 FPS now. And, oh, not even 30 FPS in some of those parts as I sort of flick the camera around. It does dip into the 20s. So this game is, of course, very, very playable on the 6500 XT if you love super low frame rates. If you want your frame rate to have 2 digits and start with a 2, then the 6500 XT 4GB is going to give you a great experience, which bodes well for the 9050 4GB when that model comes out. I suspect this is largely a VRAM concern. Maybe we could see higher levels of performance. I mean, it is using 99% of the GPU to give us this sort of frame rate. But yeah, it's not a particularly high or great experience. And again, because we're using the FSR performance mode, it is extremely blurry and extremely pixelated. So it is like you've just smeared a whole bunch of Vaseline all over the screen, which, as we know, is a great way to experience PC games. Just, you know, would you get this experience on a PS5? I mean, this has got to be better than a PS5 type of experience, right? 30 FPS, extremely blurry visuals, lots of pixelation, stuttering, performance issues, move the camera around, it drops into the 20s. That's a console-like experience, right, from this GPU that you could have purchased about 4 years ago. So, yeah, loving 007 First Light here. I'm sure we can find a couple of other games that run just as well as this one. So here we are in Crimson Desert, one of the most popular games that was released earlier this year, and we've just dived into the settings to see exactly what would be configured out of the box on a 6500 XT system. They reckon 1440p with no upscaling using the Ultra preset is using right around 4 gigabytes of memory. So we'll load into the game. We'll see how this particular game goes. I'm not holding my breath that those settings are going to work on the 6500 XT, but certainly we may be just about okay with the VRAM. We'll find out in just a moment once we've loaded in. The loading screen is stuttering a little bit here and only running at 25 FPS, so yeah, big stutters right there as it's trying to load in this particular game. If we get above 30 FPS, I'll be pleasantly surprised, but we'll see. Alright, we're just about to load into the game, and this is what I love to see straight out of the bat. Native 1440p resolution running on a 6500 XT. It doesn't get better than this. The game looks amazing. look at these draw distances, look at the high quality nature of this particular game. Now, you do have to ignore the fact that on the 6500 XT it is running at 11 FPS. But if we ignore the motion, if we don't move the camera or do anything, you can really enjoy this high quality gaming experience. Now, as soon as I press to move forwards, it does sort of fall apart and you can sort of see exactly how bad the game is sort of running. 10 FPS in this city area is not the best experience, bit of a slideshow, but again, we're sort of looking at an entry-level GPU. So I'm sure this is what AMD would have expected that people would have been experiencing when they had purchased this card for about $300 back in 2022 when it was first released. A 1440p native frame rate or native resolution experience at 10 FPS in this particular title. So we will try some setting adjustments here because there is the potential that we can get the 6500 XT working. So the first thing that I'm going to try is just to lower the resolution because I think 1440p might be a bit of a stretch. So we'll just get that working first. Okay, that didn't make too much of a difference to our frame rate. The game does look noticeably worse now, but we're still only running at about 12 FPS. So I'm not exactly, or 10 FPS at this specific moment in the game. So I'm not exactly enthused about that. I think we'll probably have to also dial down the graphics preset. So how low can we go? There's a minimum preset, but let's just try low to begin with. I think we'll probably be safe with low. Are we safe with low? No, not really. Still only getting 17 FPS in this city area. We'll reset the average. Yeah, 18, 20 FPS. Our VRAM usage is actually manageable right now. You can see in the overlay that we're only using about 3.1 gigabytes out of the total 4 gigabytes that this card is able to provide. So we may just simply be being compute limited at the moment on this particular model. It doesn't have a ton of, GPU horsepower to go along with its VRAM. So it's not necessarily that limitation, but yeah, it is very slow for playing this particular game. I think we'll just try the minimum preset to begin with. We'll see how far down we can go. Can we hit 30 FPS? No, doesn't look like it. Ooh, it really looks, it's really blurry now. Have you guys noticing that on the camera? The minimum preset has just made the game like ultra blurry. I mean, it's running at 27 FPS, so I mean, it's much higher than the frame rate we were getting previously. But like, what has gone on with the resolution? Did this dump the resolution as well? Video settings. Now, it's still running at 1080p. Is there anything here that's like reduced? I mean, texture quality is on minimum now. Is this just like faking the resolution or something? Because it looks like, let's go back to the low settings, right? Like that's a completely different resolution of game. So clearly something is being done on the minimum settings to, reduce the resolution. I mean, it looks absolutely terrible on the minimum. Like, don't get me wrong, it looks terrible. The frame rate isn't good either on this particular card, but like, just something is happening with the amount of. I mean, look at that character. You can barely see what's going on with that guy. Like, it's just it's actually quite. I'm shocked at how incredible this game looks. Just blowing my mind here. Let's turn on some upscaling, FSR performance mode, so we can really give it double whammy. I mean, that looks slightly better maybe than what we were getting oh, well, not really. I was just moving the camera. Look at the character. Look how pixelated it is. Oh my god. Look at that. The character, it's crazy. What on earth? Man, that looks so bad. And the crazy thing about this, right, is that the game looks this bad. This pixelated artifacts all over the screen. We're using the minimum preset. We're using FSR performance upscaling, and we're still in this area only achieving 38 FPS on the 6500 XT. So I think anyone that bought this GPU back when it was released, expecting that, hey, it's not the most powerful card, I'm sort of expecting it to not, give those ultra settings experiences later down the life of this particular model, I think they probably would have been expecting better than FSR performance, minimum settings, and still a poor frame rate in the latest AAA games. Because while the game claims in the settings, I mean, it is claiming it's using more than, it's using 5.5 gigabytes of VRAM, it reckons, out of the 4 gigabytes that are allotted. Our VRAM usage metrics are showing 3.3 gigabytes, so potentially it is using over that. It just depends on how those metrics are being measured. And certainly our system memory usage is quite high at around 20 gigabytes. So that does generally indicate, or typically indicates, that some of the game's resources are spilling into that system memory. But yeah, this is like, you wouldn't want to play the game like this. I think you'd be really, really disappointed if you bought this model expecting this sort of experience in the latest AAA games. And this is a game that a lot of people were playing and wanting to play. So yeah, Crimson Desert on the 6500 XT is a fail, but we'll check out another game and see what we can do with this card. So we're just loading into Borderlands 4 now. Eventually the game did load and we're able to adjust some settings. Just trying to load into Borderlands 4. Not sure what's happening at the moment. We'll see whether we can get it working on the 6500 XT, but so far I've been on this black screen for about 30 seconds, so we may never get into the game. We'll just see whether it does end up working. It's doing something. It's really trying, but it's only running this black screen at 3 FPS, so... Oh, we got a mouse. Oh, it's loaded. It's loaded. Nice. It's running at a very low frame rate and it looks really terrible, but it did load into the game. By default, the game decided to run using the very high preset for some reason, using FSR balanced settings. I did drop the resolution to 1080p, which is what we're currently looking at as we're loading into the game. So we'll see how that works, but I'm not entirely confident that it's going to run well. Let's just have a look right here. We're getting about 5 FPS. Which is, of course, playable if you enjoy single-digit frame rates. I mean, like, if you just love that frame rate counter to be as low as possible, this is going to give you a great experience. Certainly, targeting enemies is going to be, a mild challenge, I would say, at 5 FPS. You move the mouse, it does update. It does take a few seconds for each mouse move to be registered, as you sort of can see here as I'm moving around. Are the textures loading in properly? I mean, absolutely not. I mean, this whole ground area here looks absolutely terrible. It looks very soupy. It's not a particularly high resolution, I would say, either. It looks very blurry in some of these areas and very pixelated due to the use of FSR balanced. But certainly, if you look past the fact that the frame rate is awful, the visuals are awful, that you won't be able to target enemies or play the game in any significant way, if you overlook all of that, really, it's a good-looking game. I mean, it works. So, the positives are it works. Just trying to think of any other positives. There really aren't any. But we can see whether we can drop the quality settings here, maybe, to get something working. I mean, even the menu is quite a challenge to navigate at these settings. Let's just dump this down to low settings. Apply. Is it taking some... Oh, it's compiling some shaders. And here we go. We're getting a lovely 25 FPS. Highly playable, of course. This game was released last year. Highly playable if you enjoy cinematic experiences, I should say. Is it playable and looks good? No. No. The ground still looks very soupy and muddy. The gun, there's a lot of artifacts around it. We're still using, I believe, FSR balance settings. So low preset, FSR balanced, for a 24, 23 FPS at the moment. Let's just go for a run outside here on this particular planet, see how things are going. Yeah, about 22 FPS. So I would describe this as pretty disgusting, to be fair. Looks like we've run up to the edge of something here. We'll just head back into the main little settlement area. Still getting about 25 FPS. Let's see how much further we can crank things. Is FSR Ultra Performance? Yes, Ultra Performance. That's what we need. Oh, even then we're still only getting 25 FPS using FSR Ultra Performance. And, I mean, it's made the game look very pixelated, kind of like we're running at about 144p maybe 240p, you have to say. I mean, can you see things? Can you really see what's going on up there with any enemies? Like, this is sort of a person, sort of. You can sort of make that out, I guess. It doesn't even run well. Like, there's still stuttering as I'm sort of moving around. 27 FPS. Frame generation? Should we try that out? Oh, yes. Here we go. This is the good stuff. 44 FPS with FSR frame generation enabled. Now, is this good latency? Absolutely not. Like, it feels so horrible. There's still massive amounts of stuttering, as you would have seen there on screen briefly. You sort of move around, your frame rate dives and tanks all over the place. It's clearly not giving you a smooth output. The frame rate isn't high, very rubber banding sort of feel. Like, look at this. Just, that is supposed to be smooth via frame generation. Not working well in any sense of the word, but if you're going to put this on a performance chart, you could claim that Borderlands 4 is playable on the 6500 XT, because with the right settings, you can get, in certain scenarios, over 40 FPS. Would I recommend this to anyone? I mean, let's have a look at this board here. You can sort of not really see what's going on in any sense, but Borderlands 4, is it playable? Technically, yes. Still a great test for modern GPUs. Is a game that was actually released before the 6500 XT, Cyberpunk 2077. We're currently loaded into the Phantom Liberty area, and if we go through the settings, just so we can sort of validate what we're currently doing, we are running at 1080p, native 1080p, using the Ultra preset, so most of the settings are set to sort of the highest level, and this is without ray tracing, of course, because not holding my breath that the 6500 XT can play this game using ray tracing. But as we can see here, nice and cinematic frame rate, lots of motion blur because we've left motion blur enabled. We're running at about 23 FPS, so that is of course a great experience. We'll reset the average counter so you can get a good experience of what it's like playing through this area at 21 FPS. So that's nice and suitable. Love playing at that sort of frame rate. Bit of frame rate spiking here and there as we sort of move around. It's not the most consistent frame rate, but it certainly does work. So we've been able to load into the games. That's a good start. I think we'll probably be able to improve performance by turning down the preset, and we'll just dump it to maybe medium using no resolution scaling, and we'll see how that goes. We've been able to improve the frame rate to 35 FPS using medium settings. Yeah, running through that area just briefly dipped us below 30 FPS. We'll just try a run through here. This is the usual area I like to benchmark the game in, because it's one of the more intensive parts of the game. So if this runs well on your particular GPU, it typically bodes well, but generally speaking, what we're getting here is, first of all, a low frame rate on medium settings, but also quite a lot of these frame rate spikes that you can probably see in the frame time chart here. So as we're moving from area to area, there are just periods where you get a nice stutter or a hang briefly, which sort of doesn't make it feel particularly smooth. And the level of motion blur that we're sort of faced with right now is just absolutely sickening. Like, it's almost giving me a headache how blurry the game looks with this level of motion blur. I don't know why people play like this, but some people do. It looks awful in my opinion, but whatever, some people love motion blur. I think we can go, I mean, there's one preset below this, right, that we can go to. We can go to the low preset. We won't use upscaling just yet. So this is the low preset. We've been able to improve our frame rate to about, I don't even want to call it 40 FPS, because again, we're still seeing these sort of stutter issues. They've removed motion blur now. Still these weird hangs where the game just sort of like, it briefly pauses and then sort of rubber bands you slightly back into the game. So even though we're sort of moving through here and our frame rate appears to be around that sort of consistent, low 30s throughout that section, it just isn't giving us good levels of smoothness. You can see from the 1% low that in this area we're only getting a relatively poor 1% low, around 25 FPS in this segment after I've reset the stats. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't want to play Cyberpunk 2077 like this. I mean, the level of rubber banding through here, the stuttering that we're seeing, the lack of consistency in frame times, even using the low preset, this is just not a good experience. And again, this game was released before the 6500 XT. So when the 6500 XT was released in 2022, this is one of the cutting edge games that people were really excited to play. This particular segment I think was added in maybe around the time, maybe the same year. Again, there was some texture issues that you might have seen there as we sort of exited this. Like, look at the textures that have been loaded on the pyramid there. It's sort of, eventually they load in, but that far distant texture did not look great. I mean, maybe if we use FSR 3 on the performance mode, we might get 40 FPS. That's sort of what what we're seeing here. It's very pixelated, very blurry, as we've seen from all the examples of using the FSR performance mode throughout all of these games. But again, like at 1080p, using the lowest in-game preset, using performance mode upscaling, we're still not getting to a good level of frame rate. The 1% low is still in the 30s. We're still getting this sort of lack of smoothness in terms of the frame time consistency. The overall frame rate, it still doesn't even hit 60 FPS. Any sort of movement that requires loading in and out, you might have seen again as we sort of enter that club there are those stutters, those frame time spikes that just don't lead to a good experience in this game. So, I mean, based on what I'm seeing in this area, I mean, the 6500 XT it can't play this game properly. It can't play one of the sort of premium games that people have loved to play over the last sort of 5 years, one of the flagship titles. And again, like I mentioned, I've mentioned this a few times now, Cyberpunk 2077 was released before the 6500 XT, so this GPU was dead on arrival, like completely unusable in modern games when it came out, let alone some of the games we've been testing out throughout this video, where you would have seen more modern titles that were released this year, like Crimson Desert and that sort of thing. This game, it should have been playable when it came out, but because of the lack of resources, the slowness of this GPU, we're just not able to get a good frame rate experience in that particular game. So yeah, not impressed with Cyberpunk on the 6500 XT, not a huge surprise. But again, I still got some time to check out a few other games, so we'll check out something else. Now, after the outstanding success of playing Borderlands 4 on the 6500 XT and eventually getting a playable frame rate, ignoring the absolutely horrendous quality that we were getting, I decided to fire up Mafia The Old Country. And instead of, stuffing around with some of the high settings, I thought I would just dive straight into using the low presets. This is currently low settings. We're rendering at 1080p, and we are using native rendering for now. So this is 1080p, as I said, 1080p, low settings, native rendering, Mafia The Old Country on the 6500 XT. Now the game does have one of those nice VRAM indicators, and if you go into the graphics settings, you will see that we are currently exceeding the VRAM budget that can be allocated to the game. Not sure why it's only saying there's 2.5 gigabytes available, but nevertheless we are seeing quite high VRAM usage. I'm just going to take out one of the cars that I've got here from my nice little stable of vehicles, and we'll go on a bit of a drive around the countryside here in Italy. And as you can see, we're getting a very nice, very playable frame rate. As I've been talking throughout this video, how much I love playing in sort of that low teens frame rate, how it really enhances the experience for me. I can see every frame as it's being displayed. I don't need to worry about things changing from frame to frame. My eyes are able to just absorb each frame as they're coming into my eyes, kind of like stop motion animation, a form of art that I really enjoy and love. And I really like my gaming experience to be like that. And Mafia The Old Country running at 1080p low settings on the 6500 XT is just bringing me the joy of watching, Chicken Run when I was a kid or something like that. So yeah, I mean, like I said, sort of running well. Can we get it running, even faster? Can we get up into that cinematic zone? And one of the potential things we can do is change from running using TSR native to potentially FSR. We'll try the performance mode here just to see how things are going. And ooh, nice, 43 whole FPS or 39 FPS. I think it has enabled frame generation though. Have a look at some of these artifacts here. Is this enabling? I mean, that looks like a frame generate. That looks like a frame generation artifact to me. Have we sneakily been playing this with frame generation on this whole time? Have we sneakily been using that? Let's have a look. Yes, frame generation's been on. Let's turn that off. Let's see what we were getting at with did it? No, you can't enable frame generation with TSR on, can you? The settings don't allow that. So I guess once I flicked over to FSR, the frame generation toggle appeared, and then it was enabled when I switched into the old performance mode. So I was like, those artifacts looked absolutely awful. But anyway, this is the 1080p FSR performance mode using the low settings in Mafia The Old Country experience on the 6500 XT. You can see we're getting just under 30 FPS. So even then, we're still not really able to match what you would see from a current generation console. The consoles do actually have a 60 FPS mode in this game, the PS5 and that sort of thing. But yes, 30 FPS. So if you love the 30 FPS gaming experience, you can sort of get that with atrocious visual quality. I mean, you can see on screen what this game looks like when you're playing using FSR performance upscaling at 1080p. Sort of looks very soupy. Can't really see any definition whatsoever. But it does work. So, you know, we haven't yet found a game that is just completely broken and refuses to run on a 4GB GPU, but certainly this particular game, look, I mean, we're sort of driving around the city area and only getting 25 FPS, which would make me just want to stop playing and go outside and, you know, watch grass grow or something. But nevertheless, it is a game that has worked on the 6500 XT, and if you are a sucker for punishment, if you love pain and suffering during your gaming experience, if you want a game that's going to be incredibly difficult to play, as I'm even just sort of struggling with the current gameplay, yes, Mafia The Old Country, we can tick that one off as a great success for the 6500 XT. Now, there's no better game for visual experiences than Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, a game that uses ray tracing by default. This is a title, of course, you should be able to run on a 6500 XT because the 6500 XT supports ray tracing. So once we load into the game here, I'm sure we'll have absolutely no problems, because if you see the ray tracing logo on the box, it of course means that all ray tracing games will work flawlessly. And of course doesn't mean that the architecture is completely incapable of ray tracing on a GPU of this power. That would never mean that or anything. So let's get into Indiana Jones. Ooh, is it working? Oh, we've just jumped down into a single digit frame rate. Yeah, so it's tried to load in. It's currently giving me 9 FPS. We'll just check the settings to make sure nothing crazy is going on here. Yeah, resolution of 1440p on this 1440p monitor may be a bit much, so let's just quickly drop that to 1080p. I think that will give us a bit better chance of running this particular game. Oh yes, supreme graphics at 10 FPS may not be the best experience. Let's give it a quick whirl. Yeah, I'm not enthused about playing this at 1080p on the Supreme preset settings. Yeah, it's pretty hard to control, I'd give you that. Hopefully if we go into this sort of outdoor area that our frame rate will improve. Of course, that's usually what happens in games, right? You go into large areas and your frame rate goes up and not down. Yeah, getting about 7 FPS using the Supreme settings at 1080p. So even just trying to load this menu is extremely difficult because, yeah, the game is still only being rendered at 7 FPS. I'll try to turn down the graphics settings. What have we currently got? It's not using any upscaling, I don't think. Yeah, it's using native TAA. So we'll dump this overall graphics preset down. Okay, wants a restart. We'll give it a restart. We'll go to very low. Or is that the lowest? Yeah, we'll stick to low. We'll give the game a restart. Alright, we're back. Low settings at 1080p. Here we go. We should be getting a nice playable frame rate here. 17 FPS. Using the low settings in this game at 1080p, or at least native 1080p, I believe. I mean, it doesn't look great. It kind of looks to me like we're still running at a below native resolution, maybe. Maybe when you use low settings, upscaling is enabled or something like that. It doesn't look very good. Or maybe I'm just not used to playing games at 1080p at such a low frame rate, because of course, with the way modern games work, they kind of are built around at least, you know, a relatively high frame rate to get things working in terms of the accumulation that you see with TAA and some of the effects in games. We'll just check, because it does look pretty bad, but it could still be running at the native resolution anyway. Yeah, low settings. Still using native TAA, no resolution scaling, so maybe it just doesn't look great at this particular resolution. We'll try running FSR on the performance mode, because that is, we won't use frame generation. We'll see what sort of frame rate. It hasn't improved the frame rate really at all, I would say, turning on FSR. No real change to our frame rate graph. We're still getting around, you know, below 30 FPS, 24, 23 FPS, so a very cinematic experience in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I think the ray tracing and the overall VRAM requirements of this title is just completely crippling the 6500 XT, really. I mean, our RAM, so our system memory usage, is nearly 25 gigabytes. Our VRAM usage is 3.6 gigabytes. So I think a lot of the system resources are being currently offloaded to system memory as opposed to being put into the VRAM, which is causing some performance problems. I mean, this indoor area is sort of running just over 30 FPS. I know we can get into this library area if we go up these stairs and through this door. We'll see what we're sort of running here. No, back down to about 22 FPS. So that's not amazing. 27 FPS moving up these stairs. And again, like a lot of this texture quality, I mean, look at that. It's clearly not loading in a texture there. I don't know whether it's supposed to be loading in a texture, but there's just nothing going on there. That looks absolutely atrocious. Some of these book textures don't look great. There's another one of those mats. And yeah, some of the things look like they've loaded in properly, but then you sort of look at the door, very low resolution textures there. We go up to this board, all of these postcards, you just can't really see what's going on because they look so bad. Yeah, look at the shadow resolution that we're seeing in this game. Again, the floor here, there's just no detail here whatsoever. This book, low resolution. I mean, this is sort of the game experience that you would have seen over 10 years ago, excluding the lighting quality, because again, like some of the ray tracing effects look all right. But in terms of like the image detail, the quality you're seeing on all of these objects, this is like, I don't know, 2005 era, 2008 era games sort of look like this. And just, you know, the overall quality of the large textures that you see across parts of the game world. So Indiana Jones, I mean, if you're sticking to these sort of very narrow corridors, I mean, look at these paintings. It's like, I mean, some of those look a little better than what we were seeing previously. Look at that painting. Are we going to see a texture load in at any point? No? No texture? No? Alright, fair enough. Not enough VRAM, I guess. So yeah, this is the experience you get in the 6500 XT in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and there's really not much more you can do to improve performance, because if we sort of have a look, I'm already running at 1080p using the low preset, which has pretty much all of the settings set to low, except for vegetation animation quality. We're using FSR upscaling using the performance mode at 1080p, which already looks awful. And on the 6500 XT, we still can't even get like 30 FPS. So, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. We'll try another game and see what we can do now. But yeah, I haven't been enthused with this particular one. So another highly popular single-player game from the last couple of years is Kindom Come Deliverance 2. This game was widely played by PC players, got some good feedback, some good review scores, and people generally love playing this one. I enjoyed it as well. We're currently in the Kundenberg area of the game, so it's one of the more performance-intensive areas, and we're currently playing at 1080p with native 1080p rendering with SMAA T2X, and we're currently playing using the Ultra settings. So on the 6500 XT in this particular area, we are getting about 11 FPS using those particular settings. So obviously not an Ultra settings card, which aligns with a lot of what we've said throughout this video. The 6500 XT, you know, it doesn't really have the resources for modern AAA gaming. We'll turn down the graphics settings though. We'll just use the overall preset scale thing wherever it exists. Overall image quality, we'll turn that way down to low, I think is the lowest preset. Yeah, let's go with low. In this game, it may do some resetting for us, and we'll get back into it. Okay, so low settings at native 1080p, and this is one of the games that I would say over the last few years has been on the better end of the optimization scale. So you do get quite a lot of preset scaling. It does run well on quite a number of GPUs. But even here on the 6500 XT using the low preset at native 1080p, we're only getting about 40 FPS. So whether or not you think that's a good experience, you know, it's playable in a sense because it is above 30 FPS and some people enjoy playing games at 30 FPS, I guess. This does still fall short of what I would class is a good gaming experience. Certainly in this area, the frame rate graph at least is smoother than what we saw playing Cyberpunk 2077, where we got that consistent rubber banding even using your fairly low settings. So we are getting a low frame rate, but the frame rate is smooth, so that is something that's good to see. Now, can we get over 60 FPS if we just enable some form of resolution scaling? You know, FSR on the quality mode, is that going to take us there? It might. It might. We're currently getting 55 FPS. I mean, it's very blurry. Like, it does not look good. Texture quality is obviously a big concern, especially if you look over into some of these more distant objects. There's really, I would say, almost no textures being loaded in. You can see, like, if I step back here, like, you're sort of getting textures, but then if we sort of pull back a little bit, move back, it's loading in these really awful low quality texture versions. But we are getting a frame rate that is above 60 FPS. So, you know, is it playable? Yes. I mean, it's sort of playable. It's, you know, not a good experience, I would say. Low settings, 1080p using quality upscaling, FSR 3.1, so the image quality there isn't great. But you could theoretically have played this on a 6500 XT with some sort of success. Not a premium experience, not the best that this game has to offer, but it is usable, I would say. This all hinges on the fact that you're playing with a fairly decent system outside of the 6500 XT, so I should mention that with some of these games that do work a little bit better on this card, my test system is a PCI 5.0 enabled system running a 9800X3D CPU with 32GB of system memory. If you are using the 6500 XT with a PCI 3.0 system, for example, the fact that this GPU only has a x4 interface means that you would see quite a significant performance fall off. Steve's original testing of this card sort of showed this, that when you sort of spill over that VRAM buffer, as some of these games do, and you need to access system memory via the PCI interface, you start to see performance falling away on PCI 3.0 systems because it simply doesn't have enough bandwidth with the x4 interface there and the lower PCI spec. It's not too bad on the PCI 4.0 systems, but quite a significant performance drop off on 3.0. And then the other issue that you would have seen throughout a lot of these games is that system memory usage is often well over 16 gigabytes. Again, that's because some of the game is being offloaded from the VRAM on the GPU onto the system memory. So once you get these overflows into the RAM and you don't have enough RAM, the game just won't work. It will really start to stutter and you'll see a performance loss. So on this system that has 32 gigabytes of system memory with a 4 gigabyte GPU, there is some leeway there to sort of avoid these huge performance fall-offs. But like, how realistic is it that most people would have been playing a 6500 XT with 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory? I mean, the DDR5 these days is worth like more than double what the GPU cost. So again, if this was a 16 gigabyte system memory configuration, these games would be performing a lot worse than they are today. And so even in a title like this, where we're seeing, you know, just over 60 FPS in these intensive areas using high levels of upscale, well, high levels, you know, FSR quality mode, it is running the game at around 720p or whatever, so it's not the highest levels, but it does reduce the visual quality a fair bit. You know, we're only in this area getting, you know, just around 60 FPS using the low preset with 32 gigabytes of system memory, with a 9800X3D, with PCI 4.0, using quality FSR upscaling. I mean, we're really pushing this card to the limits. We'll check out a couple of other games just before we close out this video. But yeah, this game works. Does it work well? Not really, but it is technically a pass. So here we are in another title. We're playing Forza Horizon 6 now. And I thought, well, you know, 1440p didn't work too well with old Assassin's Creed. So I've gone with just a 1080p resolution. We're currently using native rendering. And I've gone with the extreme preset because why not? Let's give the extreme preset a go. We'll just get driving. We'll see how Forza Horizon goes. It does look a little pixelated, so a lot of aliasing going on there. Maybe I've accidentally turned off all anti-aliasing. Might have to fix that in just a moment. We'll see how this goes once we load into the game. It's taking a little while to load, which always bodes well for the gaming experience. And we're getting a lovely, low video memory warning. Running low on video memory. Please close non-vital applications or lower the video quality settings. Continuing to run with low video memory may cause instability/poor performance. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I guess the game's not exactly happy with how things are going. I'm just going to turn back on some form of anti-aliasing so the game doesn't look quite as bad. We're just going to ignore the warnings for now. And, oh well, I crashed within about 5 seconds, so that makes sense. The game is currently running at, oh my god, it is completely unplayable. Wow. Okay, I was not expecting this to be this unplayable. Maybe it's just the car that I'm using, but it's currently running at about 12 FPS. I'm finding it quite difficult to control the vehicle at the moment. So that's a great experience. immediately drove off the road. So I don't think you'll be able to play the game like this on the 6500 XT. That's using, of course... Oh, we've got another video warning memory. It's telling us a low video memory warning, telling us that we were using about 8 gigabytes of VRAM and that it really wasn't going to work on this particular game. So I guess the first thing that I should probably try to get this working is turning down the settings once again at the extreme preset. Maybe a bit optimistic. So we'll turn this down to the very low preset to see how that goes. Hopefully it won't completely crash the game. Trying to change the settings. And nice. Now we're actually able to play the game properly, just as everything is intended. So on a 6500 XT, you can actually get quite a decent frame rate, I would say, somewhere around 90 FPS, provided, of course, that you're willing to play on the absolute lowest settings. So the game is running at about 97, 90 FPS in this current area, about 80 FPS. We're out in the sort of open world of Forza Horizon, got some auto drive going because keyboard and mouse not used to playing the game that way. But anyway, it turns out that this game is actually playable to some sort on 4GB GPUs. Now, does it look good? No. One of the main things that has been stripped away here are shadows. So there's absolutely no shadows whatsoever on the very low preset. It'd be interesting to see how high up we can go with this particular game just to get it looking a bit nicer. So we'll turn it over to the low preset. Okay, the low preset does tank performance quite a bit. We're now only getting 30 FPS, although it just dipped up a little bit to the 60 FPS range. So maybe low settings are possible on something like a 6500 XT, but we're seeing some performance spikes. So not quite the best experience there, a bit of stuttering as we go from place to place. I wonder how it performs in the city area, because there's quite a few... it's quite a bit more performance intensive in that part of the city. So we'll just fast travel over there, see what this particular GPU can do. It looks like it's not too bad, to be honest. Still getting about 49 to 50 FPS. So the 6500 XT, if you do want to play a game like Forza Horizon 6, bit of stuttering there, not the best. The 6500 XT sort of can do it. VRAM usage is only about 3.5 gigabytes, so they're able to cut out quite a bit there. Does it look great? Not really. You're still playing at 1080p. You're still getting not quite the sort of 60 FPS barrier that you might like to see from this sort of game. Again, we can drop the graphics settings back down to the very low preset, and then hopefully performance will just increase a little bit. But again, we sacrifice shadows in that particular configuration. So, okay, yeah, it does look quite a bit worse, but if you do want to play this way, in sort of that mobile game sort of look, you can do it at about 80 FPS. So I would say that that is a success for the 6500 XT. 4GB GPU, it does sort of work, doesn't give you a best experience, but let's try out another game. Next up, I thought I'd try Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. Quite a taxing game in general, at least on some forms of hardware, but I thought I'd start off here with maybe something a little reasonable, 1080p. We've got anti-aliasing set to TAAU with anti-aliasing base resolution of 100%, so 1080p native, and we're currently using largely medium settings, I would say. So let's load into the game, see what we can get out of this particular GPU with just 4GB of VRAM. Okay, we're in the Batcave. It's not looking great, I would say. Immediately we're getting single-digit frame rates and a lot of performance stuttering. So it's not even a particularly stable frame rate at that. Like, obviously motion blur is enabled, which is just blurring the absolute arse out of everything. And this is not even the open world. This is just the Batcave that you access. So, the menu's nice. 100 FPS in the menu. How good's that? 6500 XT. Good GPU for rendering menus. But let's get into the open world and see what we can do. Loading screen's quite fast in the 6500 XT as well. Okay, so 1080p, native rendering, medium settings. We're getting sort of, around 15 FPS. 17 FPS. I wouldn't say it's running too well. Let's reset our average counter so we get the average from the open world. 17 FPS. I mean, we're not using the lowest preset, so I guess it's probably worth exploring the absolute lowest settings. But just immediately medium settings, 1080p. I would say this is pretty much a slideshow, not quite usable, not quite playable. Quite a lot of ghosting on that particular car there, so something's going wrong there with the upscaling or whatever's being used. But let's just dump this down to the low preset to see if we can recover some performance. Okay, so we've loaded back into Lego Batman, and we're currently playing on TAA with the maximum render resolution, so 100% again scaling, using the low preset, so everything is set to low or close to the lowest settings. And I mean, it does work. So currently in the Batcave, we're getting about, well, up to 100 FPS in this particular area, but we'll just head out into the Gotham City open world and just confirm that this game actually is playable on low settings. Alright, we've loaded back into the open world here, just have a look and see how performance goes. Still getting just under 60 FPS, you'd have to say 50 FPS or so, 49. Depends on the exact part of the game world that we're looking at any moment, but this tends to be one of the more intensive parts of playing Lego Batman, is this open world area, especially when driving around. You can run into all sorts of performance issues. But this game, at least on the low settings at 1080p, is able to keep its VRAM in check. We're only using about 3.6 gigabytes. So this game, which does advertise fairly low minimum specs, you know, you can run this on a 6500 XT at 1080p. Not with the best performance, but certainly not like what we saw with Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, where the game really wasn't playable in any sort of sense. So yeah, jokes aside, this game, you would say, gets my tick of approval at least, considering it is an entry-level GPU and that sort of thing. It does work, so that's better than what I would have expected, considering this is an Unreal Engine 5 title and all that sort of thing. So let's get into a few other games and see how those go. So here we are, burning some teammates in Battlefield 6. I've just joined a real multiplayer match right now of Conquest to see whether the 6500 XT can actually play this game. Multiplayer game might be more of a target market for the 6500 XT. And a game that was released last year, so you know, relatively new and recent. We are playing on the low graphics preset right here. If we scroll down, you'll see we're playing at 1080p, so we are using native rendering here, low preset, and we're getting not quite 60 FPS. And this is with absolutely nothing happening on screen right now. I can't stress this enough. I'm just leaving the base right now. So we're going to play through this a little bit. We'll try to get to some areas with enemies to see whether the 6500 XT can hold up in more firefight zone sort of areas. But right now, even with nothing happening, not quite at the 60 FPS level that is even sort of the minimum that you would consider reasonable for playing a multiplayer game. But I imagine there will be some firefights ahead that will not keep this at near 60 FPS. And you can see as we're sort of approaching more of the people in my team, in more sort of the action, we're already dipping into the sort of 40 FPS range, currently at 44 FPS, 41 FPS. This is where people actually are on the map. So 50 FPS, big explosion, dropped us below 40 FPS. There's a big tank, should probably not go that way. Lots of things on fire. This is quite difficult to play, I would say. Normally, if I'm playing a game like Battlefield, I'd want to be running it at least sort of the 100 FPS, 120 FPS at the absolute minimum, simply because that is sort of an acceptable frame rate for this sort of game, as we're sort of trying to play the game at the same time and not absolutely torch people and make them mad at me. But this is, yeah, it's quite difficult. I'm sort of flicking around, can't really see too much on screen. We're only getting about 30 FPS, or sorry, about 40 FPS, so not a great experience there. I might try enable some upscaling just so we can get into a more playable sort of frame rate. So we'll just go to advanced, TAA, we'll turn this down. We'll turn on upscaling, FSR, performance mode, like we've had to for a lot of the other games. I completely died, so let's just load in. Ooh, yes. Still not quite 60 FPS though, using FSR performance mode. It doesn't look good. Might be a little hard to spot enemies, but I'll give it my best shot. It's been a while since I played this game as well, so. Oh, I got a kill. I got a kill on a 6500 XT playing at under 40 FPS. Nah. Oh, there was someone right there. Well, that was my bad. That was my bad for bad gameplay. But you can see here, even with FSR performance mode, we're still only getting, well, at least in this particular scenario, like 40 FPS. So low settings, 1080p, FSR performance mode. The 6500 XT is really, in a sense, I would say, not capable of playing Battlefield 6. So that's a bit disappointing because this is one of the multiplayer games that, if you'd bought a 6500 XT, you wanted to jump into this with your mates and you didn't want to spend too much money, but you bought it a while back, you might want to play on a 6500 XT. Maybe it's the only GPU you had. And while we're in these sort of, larger, more open areas, the game is running reasonably okay. It's when we get into those more close firefights where there's tanks on screen, explosions, that the 6500 XT is just, it's not a capable GPU of playing Battlefield 6, unfortunately. So I won't keep burning my teammates in that one. We'll let them deal with that particular match by themselves. But yeah, that was pretty disappointing. I was expecting that even with the scaling that we're seeing with Battlefield 6 and other titles, that maybe the 6500 XT would be a suitable GPU. But yeah, it just isn't, even on those low settings. So I thought we'd just finish this one off by looking at the Marvel Rivals performance test. We're currently playing this game, or at least playing the benchmark pass at 1080p using low settings. So this is the lowest preset in the game. No upscaling or anything like that, just 1080p. Another popular multiplayer game that people are playing right now. One of the more popular titles on Steam, I would say. And the 6500 XT in the benchmark pass and this sort of simulation of intense battles and stuff that you'd find in the game. It's not giving you a great experience, at least using native rendering. And I guess we could, consider dropping the upscaling mode to using something like FSR quality or performance mode. But at least native rendering, this game is only averaging right now about 40 FPS, minimum FPS of 30, and there are quite substantial dips below 40 FPS. So I guess it sort of brings up towards the end of this video, like the 6500 XT, what do I make of this card, trying to reuse it or use it again in 2026? This card was always dead on arrival, right? Like, when we sort of went back and we looked at what we said in our reviews of the 6500 XT, what Steve said in his reviews, he was always pretty clear that this card is not going to be good for gaming now, so at the time that the review was made in 2022, or into the future. The card simply does not have enough GPU resources. It is limited heavily by 4GB of VRAM, and we've seen plenty of examples today where the card is simply crippled by its lack of VRAM. It doesn't have enough display outputs. It's limited by PCIe bandwidth. It's limited as well by the lack of video encoders. So even if you wanted to play a game like Marvel Rivals or Battlefield 6 and you had a cool gameplay moment, you simply can't capture it because the card doesn't have video encoders, which is just a really bizarre, crazy decision from AMD. But anyway, this card was the 6500 XT. It was never good. It was never a card that was worth recommending, and it certainly has aged, I would say, extremely poorly based on what I've seen testing a range of games today. It didn't work well in Cyberpunk 2077, a game that was available when this GPU came out. It doesn't work well in games like Crimson Desert, 007 First Light, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, all of the sort of biggest games that people have been playing this year and into last year as well. It runs okay in some games, like you might get it working in a title like Kindom Come Deliverance or Forza Horizon 6 on the absolute lowest settings, and even then you might need to use upscaling to get sort of acceptable levels of frame rates. But generally speaking, it just can't play the latest games. And so if you had spent $200 to $300 US on this product way back in 2022 when it first came out, and there was this big GPU crisis where GPUs were all inflated, super expensive because of crypto mining and activities like that, just blowing up the price of GPUs. Everyone wanted a card, and AMD comes out with this absolutely dog shit product in the 6500 XT for people. I think they just would have been very, very disappointed in a card that wasn't capable of playing games when it was released. It's certainly not capable of playing games now. And really, its only use case is for people that play certain types of lightweight titles. But even then, you have to be careful, because if you're a multiplayer gamer and you've sort of been enjoying games like maybe Counter-Strike 2 or Apex Legends or something like that, and everyone was jumping on the latest game, let's say it was Battlefield 6. Well, as you've seen, the 6500 XT really can't play Battlefield 6 at acceptable frame rates. Let's say you wanted to jump onto Marvel Rivals. It doesn't really work that well in this game either. Maybe we can try running FSR3 on the performance mode. We'll see if we can improve the performance a little bit of this particular game. But like I said, if you're sort of that multiplayer gamer and you wanted to use the 6500 XT in those sort of titles, it's still going to be hit and miss as to what titles are going to work. And so it becomes this kind of pointless niche product where if you're the sort of game that only plays one game, you know you're going to be playing something like CSGO that's super lightweight, or Valorant or something like that, and you just want a card to play that, or Dota or one of those games, then yeah, it's like a 6500 XT is going to be a great choice for you if you played that one type of game. But if you want the flexibility to change the type of game you want to play or experiment with new games that came out, this 4GB GPU is just not sufficient. And even with performance upscaling in this Marvel Rivals title, like, it's still dipping below 60 FPS in a lot of situations at 1080p using the lowest preset. So with this 6500 XT is never a good product. And what I'm really concerned about is that AMD is just repeating this again with the RX 9050 4GB. The whole point of making this video, right? We've seen the 6500 XT not work in games when they were launched and then in years into the future. And now we've got this new model that is still a 4GB GPU. It's still going to be insufficient for playing games that were released right now. Like, I'm not expecting a game like 007 First Light or Crimson Desert to really be playable on that GPU. And then you may buy it because, oh, you know, it's going to be okay for CS2 or Valorant or Apex Legends or something, but then you might want to play a game that comes out next year, like when GTA 6 eventually is released on PC. You want to give that a go, and it doesn't have the resources to play that game. It doesn't have the resources to play maybe the next big multiplayer title that's released on PC in the vein of a Battlefield 6 or something like that. And so why AMD is repeating these mistakes is just beyond me. Like, it's just a terrible GPU that should not be being released. And as we mentioned in a recent podcast, it's also concerning that they're releasing the 4GB model as an OEM-only product. So while you won't actually be able to go and buy one on store shelves, it's being put onto buyers who are sort of less informed than DIY buyers. They're kind of preying on people who go into brick and mortar stores. They want to buy the cheapest gaming PC because they just want to get into the PC ecosystem or whatever. And what they end up with is a 6500 XT-like product that cannot play today's games with any sort of decent level of performance, or even you may find it works, quote unquote, but you have to use like frame generation and stuff like that, which, if you're gaming at 20 FPS and you have to enable frame generation, you're not getting a good experience at the end of the day. So that's really disappointing. It's a GPU that preys on customers. You're going to see some additional testing from Steve this week that will hopefully go into more of the differences that you'll see between 8GB and 4GB. We've used the 4GB model of this 6500 XT for this video. But yeah, I just find it really disappointing. I mean, it's an abomination of a GPU. I mean, the 6500 XT is an abomination of a GPU. And the fact that 4.5 years later, we're seeing AMD repeat these same mistakes again to make another diabolical abomination GPU in 2026. I mean, what can you say, really? It's just, it's laughable that we're back at this level of performance again with a card that is not going to be sufficient for gaming. So what more can I say, really? Really disappointing, the 9050 4GB. Hopefully we'll get one into test. The 6500 XT has not stood up to the test of time whatsoever. It sucks. Wouldn't have recommended it back then. Don't recommend it now. It's awful. What more is there to say? I guess if you want to support Hardware Unboxed and the independent testing that we do, sign up to our Patreon. Links to that is in the description below. You can come and crap on these GPUs in our Discord community if you really want to. You can join our monthly live streams and things like that. But yeah, thanks for watching to the end of this video. It's been a fun ride testing the 6500 XT, and I'll catch you in the next one.